Good morning. I think I'm the main person on your screen. I hope I am. My name's Linda Driver, and I'm a master food preserver from San Joaquin County in California. And I'm not sure where everybody's from, but last time we did this, we had people as far away as Tennessee and Virginia. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to do this that way. Um, if you happen to live in the Central Valley of California, it's likely that you either own a citrus tree of some sort or you know someone who does. And at this time of year, that becomes a problem because this is when your lemons are ripe. They start being ripe somewhere in the middle of November and last really until March often. They at some point in time they start falling off the tree and getting ready for the next year's crop. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, you have a lot of lemons to deal with. And so today we're going to try to give you a couple of things that you can do with your lemons and give you access to some other information about things to do with your lemons. So, first up is going to be my friend and fellow master food preserver, Barbara Mattice. And she's going to talk to you about food safety. And then she's going to go straight into one of my favorite recipes, one I make at least once every year, and often more than that because it's a favorite of mine to give away to people. And that is lemon ginger marmalade, which is a really tasty uh, marmalade to put on your morning toast. Anyway, so here's my friend Barbara. Go for it, Barbara.
I hope I'm in the middle of your screen. I'm in the middle of mine.
Yes, you
I
are.
okay. I'm going to share my screen with a picture because I like the picture better than I like looking at myself. And and there we are. So this is one of the slides in my presentation because we add sanitation. We talk about cleaning, sanitation, and sterilization in every meeting. So this particular part of the presentation is about being prepared to do your food preservation. And the four main topics that I will touch on are clean, separate, cook, and chill. This information comes from fightback.org. It's fightbac.org. It's fight bacteria. It's how we keep everything clean so that we can keep it safe for ourselves. So the first thing is clean it. Um, and there are three stages to cleaning. Okay, so the first one is to get all the crumbs off the drain board, to wipe it down, to get the smudges and the goop off of everything. Your pots and pans, your drain board, your tools, your cutting surfaces, and probably lastly your hands, because we will mention washing hands several times. That's how we transfer bacteria, and so that's what we want to make sure is clean. So one of my favorite presenters always takes her very long hair and puts it in a ponytail to start. I can't do that. My hair is not that long. So get your hair out of your face. Get your hair off your neck. Get your hair back so that you won't be touching it. Um, my granddaughter has her hair come down like an all-time actress and drives me nuts. So you don't want to be touching your hair all the time. You don't want to be. The only thing I touch all the time are my glasses, and I wash them too. So get ready. Get your hair up. Get your apron on if you have one. Get your utensils. Everything clean. Then comes the second part of clean, and that's sanitation. So one of the um, one of the things that we recommend you do in sanitation is to use a solution of bleach water. It's 9 parts water and 1 part bleach, and we put it in spritzer bottles and spray it around the countertop, cutting surfaces, knives, and then you rinse it off. You don't really want to taste it, but you want it on there so that it will kill bacteria or at least diminish it significantly. The third part of cleaning is sterilization. So if you're working a recipe in canning that requires less than 10 minutes of processing time, you need to sterilize your jars before you start. And you do that by boiling them or steam canning them for 10 minutes. That's a sterilization process. So that's clean. The second part of keeping safe is separating. And what we want to do is make sure that we separate fresh foods from frozen foods, from fresh meat. Um, if you've been handling meat on your countertop, you want to make sure that you clean up after that. You want to make sure in your refrigerator that nothing is going to drip from one thing onto another. Packaged meat, I haven't had this problem recently, but used to be packaged meat. You always had to bag it at the grocery store because there was always moisture on it. And you don't know what that moisture is, even nowadays where they package it, but you don't know that it's clean. So you want to make sure that things are separated in your grocery cart, in your refrigerator, on your counters, wherever you do, to keep one bacteria from one thing coming on to another thing. The third aspect of keeping safe is cooking, and cooking is to watch the temperature. Um, I don't have it memorized in my head, nor do I have it in front of me, that you need to cook meats to a certain temperature to make sure that they're safe. There's all kinds of charts to look that up. In canning, we need to make sure that we come up to the proper temperature for the proper amount of time so that what we're canning is going to be good, going to be shelf stable, so that we can keep it and enjoy it throughout the year. So that's the important thing when we're talking about cooking and canning. The third thing is or the fourth thing is to chill. And the temperatures to remember is that your refrigerator should be less than 40 degrees, and you should be cooking things and maintaining them over 140 degrees. So between 40 and 140, that's when the bacteria are having a ball and multiplying. And the more they multiply, the more chances for you to get sick. And we certainly don't want that. So those are the four basic things, and with a little emphasis on the sanitation part, since that's the part that we pay the most attention to. So I'm going to hopefully go backwards for a minute.
Barbara, we had a question in
Okay.
the box asking if you can sterilize jars in the dishwasher.
No, they don't get hot enough. You can certainly clean them very well, but that does not sterilize them. And the sterilization again comes if your processing time on your recipe is less than 10 minutes. So you can get them warm in the dishwasher, but you can't sterilize them. I've heard that they have sterilizing settings on dishwashers, but I don't know how they work. So, and I don't seem to getting a response from my PowerPoint. So I may have to come back into this another way. So give me just a minute to see if I can figure it out.
Okay, we actually have a poll too. So while you're figuring that out, we have a poll for everybody that I'm going to ask. It's, have you attended a San Joaquin Master Food Preserver workshop in the past? And you guys should see that pop-up box now. Yes, you have, or no, you're a newbie, but you're excited to be here. So let us know. And we have one more poll question we'll ask after this one. So it looks like we've got a lot of new guests attending so far, which is awesome. I see we have Canada here. I don't know if you ladies saw that in the chat box. Canada and Tennessee.
Yes, and I vote for the Canadian guest to get the prize for the most colorful name, Yellowknife Northwest Territories. That's really cool.
Oh, Brazil. Canada just
wow.
got beat by Brazil. So awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this poll at 1 minute, about 6 more seconds. All right, let's end polling. So with that, we've got 64% are new and 36 have attended a class in the past with our master food preservers. And then let's see, while, oh, you found the poll. Okay. And then let's see, we've got one more question for you. Have you preserved citrus before? Just to kind of gauge our audience of how many have, and it could be any type of citrus. We're just curious. Somebody asked, how do you become a master food preserver? And that would be a question that you'd want to take to your local county extension office to see if your county has a master food preserver program. And then you would apply or follow instructions from your county master food preserver program if you do have one. If you don't have one in your county, you may need to visit a neighboring county to see if you can join their UC Master Food Preserver program. Or if you're out of state, check to see if your state local extension office has a Master Food Preserver program. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and end the polling. And it looks like we're almost split. We've got 49% that have not ever preserved citrus and 51% that have preserved some type of citrus in the past. So thank you for participating in that. And Barbara, are you set now to go ahead and go?
I think so.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna. All yours, Barbara.
Okay, I still have polling results on mine. Do I just X out of that?
Yes.
I just did, no problem. Okay. All right. So my name is Barbara Matthijs. I am a University of California cooperative extension trained master food preserver in San Joaquin County, and I'm happy to tell you that. I'm going to go over the recipe. I wish that you had it, but you will get it soon. We always start with a recipe. We always start with a recipe that is tested, one that we can rely on to give us good results so that we can stay safe and it can be shelf stable and do what we want it to do. Okay, so on the paper that I have, it is a quick lemon ginger marmalade. Okay, and so we had a big discussion about what quick is, because this is not a necessarily fast recipe. You need a couple of hours at least, and you can break it up. There are steps that you can do on one day and then start it all and go from start to finish on another day. But I pointed out that lots of marmalade recipes have to sit for 24 hours. You make it up and then you let it sit. And this one is a start to finish, do it. Okay. And so that's what makes it quick to me. There were discussions about the fact that that was not quick, but that's okay. All right. So the first thing you do when you have your recipe is read it from top to bottom. Read the whole thing. Read every step. I have found in some recipes, although they give you ingredients at the beginning, somewhere in the text, there's one little thing that they didn't put in the ingredients. And most aggravating, but sometimes that happens. So be sure and read the whole thing and know that if you are supposed to add, a certain amount of water at a certain time and it's not in the ingredients, then maybe you need to write on your recipe and make sure that that thing is ready to go, especially if it's time sensitive. So in preparation for making the marmalade, you gather all the ingredients. Not only do you gather them, but you measure them, because although your sugar canister looks full, 6.5 cups of sugar is a lot of sugar. And so I want to know that I have that, not 5 cups, and then I have to go to the store, but 6.5 cups. Sound like a lot of sugar? It is, but That's what the recipe calls for, and that's what you should use. If you're looking for recipes that use less sugar or no sugar, then you need to go find a recipe that calls for that as part of the ingredients and not modify a recipe. At the end of this slide presentation, there will, and at the end of Linda's too, there will be a list of places to go look for things. But I did want to point out one in particular that I really like. Uh, it's the National Center for Home Food Preservation.org. So it's just the initials, and you'll see it at the end of the screen, and maybe we can put it in the chat box. It is from the University of Georgia, which is a quite honorable gathering place for all kinds of information. University of California, University of Washington, Idaho, most of these colleges, university systems have testing facilities, and so we consider them reliable sources for recipes. Okay, so the first thing on this recipe says it makes about 7 8-ounce jars. Okay, you can make 4-ounce jars. You could probably go up to a pint jar, but then that's a lot of marmalade to open and have in your refrigerator. I always prepare one more jar than the recipe calls for. Sometimes I don't use it, sometimes I do, and but you're prepared. If you only prepare 7 jars and then you've got leftovers, that's okay. You put that in a clean container that you can put in your refrigerator. I just like to make sure that, especially I break it down into 4 ounces a lot of times because that's how I give it away in 4-ounce jars, that I have enough of them that will fit in my steam canner or water bath canner, which we will talk about shortly, and do in one batch. So I don't do them all. This is a 4-ounce container, but I don't do them all in the little ones because then I have to do multiple batches, and I'm not real fond of doing that. So 6 small lemons can be lemons from the store, lemons from your backyard, lemons from your neighbor, as long as you have permission to pick them from your neighbor. And it also calls for baking soda water, coarsely grated ginger root. Okay, if you've ever dealt with ginger, it's not the easiest thing in the world to peel. And that's why I said you can do part of this recipe beforehand, the day before, earlier in the day, whatever, because ginger is not easy to peel. It's not easy to grate. And one of the things that we have learned most recently is if you freeze it, the skin comes off much easier while it is
Or
frozen. Yes, go ahead.
you're not screen sharing.
Oh, that's unfortunate because I am on mine.
You're not.
Okay.
It's not. We aren't seeing your screen. We're only
Okay.
seeing you.
All right. I don't know what to do. Let me.
You may have to. You had to have the PowerPoint open before.
Okay, hang on. Before what? Before I shared it?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on just a minute. Okay, my PowerPoint is up.
It's not showing.
Okay, let me go somewhere else. Hang on a minute.
I'm sure everybody will be patient. We are all dealing with learning the new world of Zoom.
Okay, I'm trying to get the full Zoom screen back. Hold on, so that I can push share screen.
You might have to quit and come back. I'm not sure.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let me see if this works. Okay, now am I sharing screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay, now
it's not in the presentation. It's not in the slideshow view.
Okay, I'll get there. First, I want to.
You want to go to view and get where you're in slideshow.
Okay, hang on just a second. I want to go. not there.
Yeah.
All right.
Go up to the top of the orange bar.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. The thing about it is, okay, I'm going to have to step back because I don't know any other way to get to the front. Now am I sharing screen?
Yes, you are. And you're on the first slide.
Okay, good. So I've been talking to you all this time. And I do apologize for the reflection on my glasses, but I need them to see. And next time I get glasses, I'm going to get non-reflective glasses. Okay, I'm sharing screen and I'm in the little box talking. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. Well, then I've told you about reading the recipe. I'm going to tell you about reading the recipe a lot more times. But thanks for letting me know I wasn't sharing the screen because it looked good to me. Okay, we're going to advance um, the um, the PowerPoint, and the next screen is sanitation. So this is something that we just got through talking about. That it's something that's in every presentation because it's so important. So you're washing your hands, your surfaces, your cutting boards, your knives, your jars, your lids, and your rings, and anything else that you might be using to make your marmalade. Okay, so here's the bottle of the 9 parts of water to 1 part bleach, and I make up a very small quantity because if I'm going to be canning or using anything, I want it to be fresh. I'm trying to find out how long this mixture was viable. I couldn't find it. That's okay. Just know that don't mix up a lot of it. You want very little mixture um, to use at a time, and it doesn't take much to spritz down your countertops and your cutting boards. Okay, so here we are with our lemons that look yucky. Um, and I'm not going to read the screen to you, so catch it between what I'm saying. They look yucky. They came right off the tree. They were obviously cut off the tree because I see leaves in there. And if you buy them from the store, of course, they're going to be pretty and clean. So now they're just, they're in the bag from the backyard. So here we are in the kitchen sink with our handy dandy brush, and our lemons are clean. And we brush them under running water to make sure that everything that we're getting off of them is goes down the drain. You need to do this with any fruit that you eat um, because if you're eating a melon, you need to scrub your melon with a brush in the running water because when you slice through the melon, you're going to the knife is going to carry bacteria from the surface of the fruit through your fruit and you're contaminating it yourself. So you need to wash fruit. Some of it is scrubbable, like a melon. Some of it is wash it off, like maybe tomatoes. You wouldn't necessarily want to scrub. Strawberries, you're definitely not going to scrub, but they need to be washed off. You need to put them in the sink under running water and make sure all the surfaces are exposed to the running water. Okay, so we're going to start this recipe not necessarily at the beginning because I would have started with the ginger root because it takes so darn long. But we're going to take our lemons and in the upper left corner, we're going to take off the peel, leaving as much of the white, the pith behind as we can. We just want the yellow skin part off of our lemons, all of them. And then we're going to slice it in narrow strips. Now you can leave it this way. I prefer to cross cut it. I don't dice it, but I cross cut it because when I'm taking the marmalade out of the jar, I don't like the longer pieces of the peel to hang on. And so I cross cut mine a couple of times, but I don't chop it. I just make them shorter strands so that they will come out on the spoon and not be hanging off. Okay, so we're going to start the recipe and we're going to have all that other stuff ready that I talked about when I went through the recipe. We're going to have our jars off to the side or in your canner staying warm. Um, Probably if you're running through this and you've got your ginger all done ahead of time, you want to start if you have a water bath canner, which has a considerable amount of water in it, you want to start it and get it warm. If you're using a steam canner, it's not that critical. You're not heating that much water, so timing wouldn't be necessarily a problem there. So you're going to follow the recipe. How many times do we say that? Okay, follow the recipe and start your cooking of your peel. Okay, while it's cooking, it doesn't take very long, but while it's cooking or before, you're going to juice your lemons. Okay, this is a really cool a juicer. Mine is one that you pull up the handle and swing it back down and squish, you've got all the juice in a jar. And however you want to do this, you want to minimize the amount of the white material, the pith, the section separators, um, and maximize the amount of juice that you get out of it. And here they are all squished over on the right hand side, and your juice with the seeds and maybe some of the white pith is in there. Pick it out. The white a little white dot in there is a reflection of light and not pith. Okay, so you're going to measure all this after you strain out the seeds. You do want the flesh of the lemon, that's fine, but you don't want seeds and you don't want the pith in there. And you're going to add it to your mixture that's cooking on the stove. Okay, so this is not the time to do this. I don't know how much more I can emphasize the fact that you really should have done this. This takes a while. So you can buy your ginger root, obviously, in little packages, or you can buy it like I do. It's loose in the bin. Try to get the fattest one because you've got less peeling and not as many nooks and crannies and hard places to get the peeling out of. You can hand grate it. You can grate it with a food processor. That's the way I do it because that's the way I do it. Okay, so this is a 1 cup measuring, and it's kind of loosely piled in there. If you really like the spicy flavor of ginger, the second time you make the recipe, you might want to mash that down and get some more ginger in there because it just says a cup. It doesn't say necessarily how tight it has to be packed, but that's the amount that you want. So if you really like it spicy, if you don't like it spicy, use a little bit less or make it a lot fluffier. Okay, so pectin. Pectin comes in various different ways. I buy it in the little boxes that you see that one on the screen, right? And it's white powder, looks like Jello mix. You can also buy it in bulk. You can also buy it in liquid. Make sure that your recipe agrees with what you have. So this one calls for a box of pectin. That's what you want to use, a box of pectin. I talked to a friend recently who said, I said to her, have you tried the recipe on the inside the pectin box? And she looked at me like nuts. But I want to show you, this is what comes inside of all of these pectin boxes, and all of these instructions are very useful. It has all kinds of recipes on it. It has directions on it. It has adjustments for elevation. It's a little book in itself. So don't throw this away. Keep this. Cut it up and put it in your book and put it in page protectors or whatever you need to do. It comes in every one of them so far. My thing is, as with pumpkin pie recipe and a couple of others, Jello Digglers, is that they stop putting it on the box out of the can or inside this box. So I always save them and follow them. So it's going to say add the pectin, dump it in there, start stirring, stir constantly. You're going to add the sugar all at once, so have it pre-measured. When you go through the recipe, it's a good thing just to pre-measure everything and have it like the cooks on the TV do. Okay, so you're going to dump it all in at once, and you're going to stir it. It will dissolve fairly quickly, and then you're going to bring this mixture to a full rolling boil. Okay, lower left hand corner, full rolling boil. That means that you cannot stir it down. If you stir it, it stays the same. It just bubbles all over the head. And make sure your pan's deep enough that it can accommodate this, because the volume, I mean, you've added a lot of sugar, so you've added a lot of volume to this pan. And then you're going to boil this for 1 minute. Be as close as you can about it. Although somebody suggested to do, 1,000, 1,000. I think a second hand on your clock might be a better thing to do, a little closer. Okay, so then you turn off your heat. Now, depending on the kind of stove you have, you want to turn off your heat. If you have a stove that holds the heat, then you need to move that pan away from that burner and get it off the heat. If you've got a gas stove, it pretty much goes away, but you don't want to continue cooking is the idea. Okay, so lower left hand corner picture has white foam on the top. Foam is not bad. A foam is just not what we want to see in a jar. First of all, it just doesn't look good, not tidy. And secondly, there's air in it. And one thing we always want to remove is any excess air from the jars in order to keep it safe. So you're going to scrape that off. Now, this picture, it's scraped off. It's put in a bowl. That's fine. The bubbles will pop and it will turn into marmalade. I put it in a jar. I put it in a jar so that I can conveniently put it in the refrigerator, because I know this is going to be leftover. Also, if I prepared 7 jars for the recipe, the 8th one gets the foam. The 8th one also gets any excess off the 7 jars. Sometimes you have excess, sometimes you don't. But if you do, then it can all be saved in one jar, and it's yummy, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just got air in it. If you would like to, you can add a teaspoon of butter to the mixture, and it will take some of the foam off. It won't necessarily take it all off. That's a personal choice, and one that you kind of work through your head as you learn to can. Okay, so now you have your jars waiting for you. It wants to have hot jars. That's so you don't put hot mixture into a cold jar. Sometimes if you do, you will, the bottom of them will just break out. When you've selected your jars, even if they're brand new out of the box, be sure to check them for chips around the edge of the top of them, any hairline cracks. I have purchased them, and they're just not usable for whatever reason. Usually chips around the top. Can't have any chips around the rim. So they're clean and they're hot. They're hot from your dishwasher, or they're hot from your a water bath canner or your steam canner, and they're waiting for you. So you're going to fill them, and you've got the foam off, so you don't see any foam on these jars. And when you get them all full, I use a large funnel. Some people have a knack for just pouring with a scoop from the pan right into the jar, and good for them. I tend to be a little messier, so you'll notice that these jars are sitting on a wooden block. That's to absorb the heat without making them sit on the cold countertop, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. At any rate, you want to fill these jars to within 1/4 inch headspace. That means between the top of the marmalade and the top of the jar, there's 1/4 inch. I thought I would show you my handy dandy measuring but that was just a joke, so never mind. They do sell instruments to measure this 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch or 1 inch space, and I can't find mine, so it doesn't matter. What are those sticks?
Chopstick.
Chopsticks work very well. You take a permanent ink marking pen and you mark your 1/4 inch. and then you put it in there, and you can see when it touches the top of the marmalade, then the quarter inch should be at the top of your jar, so that means that's how much space you have in here. This is a spoon, handy dandy, works for me. It also is longer, so that if I'm working with something like bits of fruit, I can make sure that there's no bubbles of air under that. That's called a debubbler. Takes the air out. We don't want extra air in there. Air's not our friend. So there you are. Now you are going to wipe off the top of these rims and the grooves around the edges, so that there's no sticky on them, so that when you put the lids on and the rings, you have minimized any transfer of sticky. So you're going to put the lids on. Those are the flat discs. Those are called lids. This part around the outside is a ring, and you're going to put the lids on and put the rings on finger tight. So you're going to tighten them just until you get resistance, and then you're going to stop. You're not going to crank them down tight on top of that. So now you've got them. This is a atmospheric steam canner. The principle is that the water is down below the surface that the jars are sitting on. It heats up. You boil it under there. It you put this part over here is the lid that goes on it. You heat up this water. It fills the inside of the lid with steam. The steam starts coming out vent holes way down here around the rim. There's a vent hole. And if you happen to have one that has a gauge on the top, it shows you that it has to be in the green in order to start counting processing time. Otherwise, if you don't have one with a gauge on it, you must see steam coming out continuously for the entire 10 minutes that you're going to process this marmalade. If you don't have a steam canner, then you can use a water bath canner. They're usually, you've seen them around. They're big, usually gray, sometimes blue, sometimes black pots. If you're not sure you're going to continue to can, don't go buy a whole lot of stuff and then end up and not have a can. Use a deep pot. Here's one on the back of the stove. It needs to have a lid, and it needs to be deep enough in a water bath canner to get 1 to 2 inches of water above these jars. So you put the jars in the bottom on a rack, so they're not sitting on the bottom of the pan. That's to let circulation of the hot water beneath them, and also to keep them from bouncing around and breaking. So 1 to 2 inches above, and then you bring it to a full boil. You turn it down just a little bit, but make sure it's boiling. Then you start your timer. If your timing is interrupted because your electricity goes off or some other reason, you must start over with your 10 minutes of timing. Okay, so then we're going to let them process for their 10 minutes. You're going to turn off the heat. You're going to let them sit there and calm themselves a little bit for about 5 minutes. Atmospheric steam canners, it usually says 3 minutes in the instructions. That's in a water bath canner, it's 5 minutes. You turn off the heat, take off the lid, wait the 5 minutes. You don't want to be trying to take your jars out of the canner while it's boiling. You want it to settle down. So you remove these jars to a surface that either wood, because it'll absorb the heat, not your cold countertop. I put mine on a towel. That's just how I do it. That's how I learned. And I used a jar lifter. Looks like this. This is the handle. It's you put they come in different colors. You put the green part down beneath the ring on the top of the jar. You squeeze it from the top. You lift them straight up, straight over to your counter, and straight down. And you do that with all the jars. And then you let them sit for 24 hours, which it says right there. Do not disturb for 24 hours. That's to make sure that that they're sealed properly, that they cool down at their own rate and they seal properly. properly. At the end of 24 hours, go look at the top of the jar. It should be dented in. It should be concave. That means it's sealed. Lots of times when you take the lid off the steam canner or you take the jars out of the water bath, you hear that little popping noise, which brings joy to our hearts when we hear the popping noise. Okay, if after 24 hours you come and it's still domed over here, you can push it down. It's not properly sealed. It is not shelf stable. You did that and it stayed, and that's cool. Not, you have to set that one aside and it goes in the refrigerator it, to eat, not to on the shelf to be stored. So don't be go pushing them on down and then forget which ones you push down. Sometimes there's none to push down. Sometimes there are one or two. I have no explanation for that, but I do know not to put those on the shelf. They will get yucky, let me tell you. Okay, so after 24 hours, you're going to remove the ring and you're going to wash the jar. In the process of doing this, sometimes part of the product comes out and it makes sticky all over it. You want to make sure when you put these on the shelf that they are clean. We don't want to encourage ants to come in. Just say hello. And so you wash it off, wash the ring off. You can put the ring back on if you want to. Master gardeners store them without the ring because we can use these rings over and over and over again.
Master food preserver.
Who was I? A master gardener?
Uh-huh.
Sorry. Okay, master food preservers store because you can use the rings over and over again. This lid, the flat part on the top, you can only use once. It's a one-time only use unless you find some cutesy way of making ornaments out of it. For canning, shelf-stable canning, it's a one-time use. Okay, so after the 24 hours, you want to write on the top of them. And Linda, whose voice you just heard, has this really cool, for her, way of shorthand to put the words. I write the words out. I just because if I'm going to give it away, letters don't mean anything to people. However, lemon, ginger, marmalade, and I may abbreviate some of those, but I definitely get the lemon ginger on there because they can pretty much see it's marmalade. And the date. Put the date on the top on this lid, or you can put builder's tape. Some people do that. Put the builder's tape on here. It comes off really easy. It's not like those glue-on labels that you have to not only soak off, but you have to put goo gunk stuff on them to get them off. You can use tape to put on here and then peel it off. And that's good if you want to put them on the shelf and see them from the side. Otherwise, you can see them from the top and you can tell what they are. I store my jars single layer, so I can always tip it up. I store jellies in one area and jams in another and pickles in another, and so I know what they are segregated by the area that they're in. So we have them labeled and we have them ready to go to the storage area, which should be someplace cool and dark, not in your garage. Don't put them in your garage. Please don't put them in the garage. Okay, so here's your recipe, which you will be getting, I think, emailed to you. And it's everything we talked about. It's everything you saw pictures of. And it also tells you where it came from. This one came from the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving, published in 2012. And if you have old recipes, like Grandma's recipes, you need to find an updated one to make sure that you're using safe recipe procedures. And although Grandma got away with it for 50 years, you may not be able to. There are more bacteria, there are stronger strains of bacteria, there's things out there that'll get you that weren't around when Grandma was doing this. So make sure you use an up-to-date recipe for whatever it is that you're making. I think there's one more slide. This is the first time you've seen it, but you will see it again at the end of Linda's presentation. And these are the places that even if you don't remember the shorthand, you can find all of these places by remembering the words. So the third one down is the National Center for Home Food Preservation. the one I spoke of earlier that comes from the University of Georgia. Any of those words will get you there. It has a nice search engine. You can go anywhere you want. Um, so easy to preserve is a really nice cookbook that we use in the Master Food Preserver program from the University of Georgia again. So I'm leaving that up there for a couple of minutes, and then I am going to stop sharing, and Linda's going to continue. And hopefully we push all the right buttons because I don't always. Thank you. Are there any questions that went unanswered? Okay.
Right. Okay, so I need to share. Come on, start video. And we need to make me replace spotlight. Yay. Okay. I'm there. Let's see if I can make that go. Okay. Now,
Barbara, we did have a question.
Okay.
That question is there a resource for fixes if the marmalade doesn't gel after processing? That was one question. Let's see. And then is there a reason for taking the rings off before storage besides just being able to reuse them again? I always do, but my mother disagrees and says they should stay on.
No, there really isn't a reason. I leave the rings on if I'm going to gift the product. I think you won't dislodge the lid quite as easily if you knock it around. So if I'm going to give them away, I leave the rings on them. But if I'm going to put them in my cupboard, I take them off. And no, leave them on if you want to leave them on. It's not an arguable point. You just however you want to do it. I don't like to buy them, so I use them over and over again. And when you buy these, you can buy just the lids. They come 12 to a package, and I prefer to spend the money that way. The first question was about reprocessing the marmalade, and I want Linda to chime in on this. My understanding is at that point, you have some really tasty ice cream toppings.
Or syrup for pancakes.
Yeah, pancakes, good. Yeah, some toppings. But Linda, if you disagree with that, please.
Was it because it didn't gel, or what? Why was it being reprocessed? I missed the.
Yes, if it doesn't gel.
Oh, I haven't ever had that problem. And I've made this recipe probably 20 times. So, I think that, and generally, the not gelling has more to do with how long you boiled it. Either you didn't boil it long enough, or if you go too long, and it's not a 10 seconds too long. It's quite a bit longer too long. That can cause problems with your gelling. But there's nothing. I don't see any harm to trying to reprocess it. It's because if it doesn't gel, then you still have the syrup that you had before. So it can't hurt it to reprocess it. Let's put it that way.
And then what is the shelf life?
It's interesting. As master food preservers, we're told to make what you would use in a year, because you're going to have another crop of lemons next year. You're going to have another crop of peaches next year. Whatever it is you're putting up. And not with the lemon ginger marmalade, I haven't tested it on this, but I make elderberry jelly, and because I have elderberries in my yard. And as a test thing, I was cleaning shelves at one time, and I found I think it was 3-year-old elderberry jelly hiding out on the back of the shelf. And we were teaching a class to home cottage food preservers, and I opened a brand new jar, one that had been made that year, and the 3-year-old one. And the 3-year-old one would have been safe to eat. It was sealed. It was in the jar. It would have been safe to eat. But the difference was the color had changed, and the gel was loosening. So there was more liquid coming off of the gel. The brand new jelly stood up like jelly does. And so what happens if you keep it longer than a year is the quality starts to deteriorate. And so in order to have the best quality, you want to use it up within, you'd like to use it up within a year, 2 at the most. So, and just I'll hold it up for the screen. That's my labeling methodology. I make a lot of different products and they all have different initials. So lemon ginger marmalade is LGM with the date. Am I still on?
Yes.
Yes.
You are, and you're good to go. With we can see your PowerPoint, so you're good to start.
Okay. And well, before I get started on that, let's see, Barbara, you said you couldn't find your headspace measure. It looks like this. It's a weird looking thing. And you can buy a kit that has a funnel, a jar lifter, and the headspace measurer all in one if you really want to. But you can do quite well with a ruler or that chopstick with the 1/4 inch marked on it. So that works too. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to make preserved lemons. And you may say, like I did the first time I heard this, what are preserved lemons? And I will tell you a story. So this was several years ago, and my friend Julie was having a party. And I went over to her house, and she had wonderful food laid out. And on this one tray were crackers and a log of goat cheese and preserved lemons. And I'd never seen preserved lemons before. And so I was a little cautious about what they might be like. And so I put some goat cheese on the cracker, and then I sprinkled some preserved lemons over the goat cheese, and I stuck it in my mouth. And I looked at other people and I said, I don't know what the rest of you people are eating tonight, but this is mine. That's how good it was. Oh, salty, lemony wonderfulness. That's what preserved lemons are. And they are used a lot in North African cooking. And if you just Google how to use preserved lemons, you will get everything. I found a recipe last night that I want to try for a cake with preserved preserved lemon and ginger cake. And I've got to try that one. Okay, same routine. Clean everything before you start. Clean off your counter. Get rid of the crumbs, then clean stuff. Clean the things that you're going to do. We can't say that too much. That's my container that sits on my counter and gets refreshed. And it's really handy to squirt around and get the whole sink clean at one time. So 9 to 1. And I wrote on the side of it so that I would remember 9 to 10, 9 parts water to 1 part bleach, and wrote and labeled it, because if somebody else happened to come along, they wouldn't know that there was bleach in that water. And then they might have spots on their clothes. And you will get spots on your clothes if you're not careful. Okay. You saw this picture before, but it's because these are lemons that I went out and harvested. And the tree that they come from has fights scale. I'm a master gardener too. And so it fights scale, and then it gets black sooty mold. So when you harvest the lemons off of this tree, they are not clean. They are not what you would want to use. You need to scrub them really well before you use them. And I take that brush to them and I scrub them down really good, and they look great when I get done cleaning them. As master gardeners, we tell people, and master food preservers, we tell you to store your citrus on the tree. It'll stay good on the tree for a really long time. Once you harvest it, the decomposition starts. And if you have even a little bit of mold around or anything, you can turn your back and come back in the kitchen the next day and find something all soft and ready to be tossed in the garbage instead of used. So you pick them with the stems on, because if you pull them off the tree, you have created a little hole that all that bacteria and bad stuff can go right in, and you don't want to do that. So wash them under running water and get them thoroughly clean. These are sitting on the racks in my sink waiting to be scrubbed. And sometimes they look better than others. So you gotta look at them. Cut the blossom end off. And the reason you cut the blossom end off is that is where the hormones hang out in the fruit that says rot. And if you think about it, the flower and the fruit and the seed are the way the tree reproduces. And so it wouldn't do the lemon tree any good if its lemons never rotted, because the seeds would be stuck inside the lemon forever. So when it drops its lemon, it wants its lemon to rot. Well, you don't want it to rot. You want it to stay better. So you want to cut off the part that's going to tell it to rot and don't put it in your jar. And then I cut off the other end. Now, there are recipes, and there are many ways to do this. Some recipes say leave the fruit whole and cut almost all the way through and then pack the middle with salt. Well, if you have a good sized lemon, if your lemons are a fairly good size and you're trying to shove them in a quart jar, it gets really hard to get very many in a quart jar when they're whole lemon size. So when they're a whole lemon size, cut them into quarters. They pack a whole lot better. It's the amount of salt that you put in that counts, and it's about a tablespoon of salt per lemon. That depends on how big the lemons are, and I have a slide later that talks about that. You can use kosher salt or canning and pickling salt. The difference between the two is the pickling salt, and if you look on the lower right part of the picture where it says ingredients, all it says is salt. There's nothing else in there. There's just salt. So that's sodium chloride. That's all that's in that box. The kosher salt, I think it used to not have any anti-caking stuff, but apparently it's not possible to find it anymore without an anti-caking ingredient. Both of them work. I've used the kosher salt, and I've used the kosher salt more than I've used the pickling salt, because the pickling salt is sometimes hard to find. I did find it, had to go to 3 stores this time to find it. Do not use iodized salt, because it's going to give flavors that you don't want, because you're going to be fermenting this. You pack them into jars, and I'm going to tell you, you can use regular mouth jars, but this is a place where using wide mouth jars is a really good idea, because you need to get that fruit in there and you want to shove it together. You're wanting to have the juice flow out of the segments that are in there. You leave the pulp and everything in there as part of the process, but you want to smash what you're putting in that jar. And if, depending on what size jar you have, you can put the spices that you're going to add. You don't have to add spices, but you can if you want to. And at the end of the recipe, there are different spices listed that give different flavors to your product. I generally use, for mine, just because I have it, bay leaves and whole peppercorns, because it gives it a little bit of flavor, but mostly I'm going for the salted lemon part of the flavor. If you're doing a quart, it helps to probably put a little bit of your spices in the bottom, some in the middle, and then some close to the top. And you want to fill the jar. After you've gotten the jar all filled and you've added lemon juice to bring it up and cover the fruit, you want to put your lids on. I'm showing both kinds of lids. I have a supply, they sell them in the stores, the plastic lids that fit. We're not processing this jar. We're not going to put it in a canner. We're not going to put the whole thing under boiling water. So the plastic works, and you can use that, or you can use the regular 2-part lids. And as you can see, we have a variety of citrus fruit there. We have 2 different kinds of lemons, and we have a jar that's full of a giant genetic sport, which I will have to explain what the gigantic genetic sport is. The fermenting process says to put your jars in a dark, cool place, not cold, cool, and for at least 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. And you can go longer if circumstances say you want to do that. And every day you want to shake the jars. And when I'm talking about shaking the jars, I'm talking about these jars live in the second bedroom where I don't go in very much. And I take it out of the bag every day, and I do this a couple of times, and then I put it back in the bag. The reason why the bags are sitting in the tub is occasionally, like this bag here, you probably can't see it, but there was a leak, and that wouldn't be pretty if it was sitting on something I didn't want it to leak on. So I have many of these plastic wash tubs, and so my jars sit in the plastic wash tub. And then one of the things that I don't know why I didn't figure it out sooner, but I have the plastic wash tub on the bottom, and then I put another one on the top, and it really gets dark in there, so I don't have to worry about the light interfering with the process. Let's see. I think that's it. You just hit it's a once a day thing. That's where the cats eat, so I go in to open a can of food for the cats, and I swish all my jars at the same time. And 2 weeks out, this is what they look like. So you can see that something's going on in there. You can see that there's fermentation is happening. If you open the jars, you can smell what's going on. And when we get to 4 weeks out, we have something we can now eat. And if you look, you want to pull the pieces out of the jar. You separate the pulp from the skin, and I have known people who said they use the pulp to flavor things, but I don't do that. That part goes in the garbage can. And you rinse off the excess salt. We tell a story about a master food preserver that we know who made preserved lemons. The person who made the preserved lemons didn't know anything about what you do with them. He was experimenting. And when the preserved lemons got to the point that they were done, they opened the jar and pulled some out. And the person in question's wife said, "That looks really good," and popped a whole piece in her mouth. It immediately came back out because this is a very salty item and is not going to stay in your mouth. And they thought they'd done something wrong, and so the whole jar got thrown away. They didn't do anything wrong. It needs to be rinsed before you use it. So you remove the pulp, rinse off with under running water your skin, and then almost every recipe I've ever seen for preserved lemons either has it in little thin strips or in little diced pieces, because it's not something that you want to get a great big hit of. You want that bright, lemony, salty pop of flavor in your mouth when you eat it in a recipe. And so right there, it's ready to go on the cracker with the cheese and be enjoyed. Okay. This process can be done with any kind of citrus fruit. I've tried it with several different kinds. The jar on the left has 28. I counted them. Has 28 of what's called a limequat. I have a kumquat tree and a limequat tree. They're both miniatures. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can see various size of lemons. So the limequat is the little one. The other jar contains the skin of one of the lemons on the other end. That the best identifier I have gotten is that it is a genetic sport. And the tree that makes the Eureka lemons, the yellow ones, has both those three on the right, all came from the same tree. So the middle one is sort of a normal size lemon. The next one to the right is a fairly large size lemon. And then the one on the far end is a giant size lemon. And the lemon, all of them have lemons that you can use and eat inside. And the biggest difference, the one on the right has a bigger lemon inside. It just has about an inch thick of white pith. And so it's a large lemon with a lot of skin around it. And here's your recipe with all the directions. And down at the bottom, you can see that there are different kinds of spice combinations that you can put in. And as long as it's dry spices that you are adding, and you will notice all of these things are dry spices. There's not anything that is a fresh kind of vegetable. So the bay leaf would be a dried bay leaf. The peppercorns are dried peppercorns. The cloves are dried. So everything that you see there is a dried spice. And so you can mix and match to your heart's content as long as it is a dried spice, not a fresh one. Okay. And I think, and then our last slide is the contact stuff again, the places where you can find safe recipes. Okay. Did we have any questions? Oh, does it make a difference if you remove the seeds? I haven't ever tried to remove the seeds because I didn't need to, because they're all I'm going to use is the peel at the end. And so there's not any point in spending a whole lot of effort trying to get rid of the seeds because I'm not going to use them. I'm not going to use that part anyway.
Linda, somebody asked if you could use pink salt, and then somebody else commented that might add an off flavor.
No, and actually, one of the things that I learned about sea salt, and even that Himalayan pink sea salt, is from the sea, but it was a long time ago. See, I talked to a man who had a business making sea salt, and I had not been aware, but it does make sense. Not all ocean water tastes the same. The salt content and the other minerals and things that are in the water differs depending on where. And so if you use sea salt of any kind, you're not getting just salt. You're getting salt plus. And since you don't know what that plus is, you don't know how it's going to affect the flavor of your preserved fruit. So it's better if you can find, and you can buy it on the internet, and it's only about, I think I paid $4 a box, but I saw it from someplace else that I wasn't willing to travel that far, for like $2 or less. So it's not terribly expensive, and you can always find the kosher salt.
Okay. Kelly asked, what kind of lemon juice? Squeezed from other lemons or bottled?
You could do either, but since there's a plethora of lemons, I just squeeze some more lemons. And I was going to mention, we're talking about trying to use up lemons. In the picture of my stove where this the canner kettle, the steam canner is, you can see a very tall pot behind it. I keep that on my stove because I have a burner that is, it's the traditional back burner. Has a very low setting, and so it'll keep something at a simmer, but it'll take a day before it'll boil away. And in the wintertime, when the house can be really dry, I kind of keep that going. And it is a great place to toss excess pieces of lemon or pieces of ginger peel, because it puts a smell of lemons or ginger throughout my house, which I don't find objectionable. So it's a good thing to do with those things.
Okay. Does the paper bag just add darkness?
Yes.
Paper bag. Okay.
Yes. If you really had a closet or someplace you could put the jars, you wouldn't need it. But this is in a room that has light, so the paper bag adds darkness.
Okay, we had a couple questions about using grapefruit and oranges. Can you use grapefruit or oranges?
I have used this process on several different kinds of citrus, and it has worked on all of them. So Because the preservation method that is happening here, first of all, lemons are between 2 and 3 on the pH scale. So they are very acid to start with. And then we are adding salt in major amounts. And salt is one of the ways to preserve foods. So, and the process is making something ferment. So there isn't any reason that I can think of why you couldn't do this with any citrus.
Okay. Rebecca would like to know, what would you recommend is a good mix of spices for a first timer? First time making this, what would you recommend to start off with?
Well, the bay leaves and the peppercorns are very, um, they go with a lot of things. So you might want to take a look at those list of spices that were on the at the bottom of the recipe, and choose ones that you are familiar with and that you already know that you like. I mean, don't go adding something that you don't like. I don't like super spicy things that burn my mouth, so I would go really carefully with any of the chili pepper kind of things myself, because I know I wouldn't like what I got.
Okay.
So I would start with something mild and simple.
You can also just use salt. You don't have to add anything
Yeah,
else.
you don't have to. That's correct. You don't have to add any spices at all. You can do this with just salt.
Laura would like to know, how do you store the rest of the lemons if you only take one out? So once you've
Oh,
opened it,
once we get to we're done with the fermenting, the jars move to the refrigerator. So the jars live in the refrigerator until I finish using them.
and that's all the jars, not just the
All
jars,
the jars.
it's all the
Because
jars.
if you don't, you're not going to stop the fermenting process.
Okay, let's see. Once you preserve citrus or other than lemons, do you use the juice of those fruits or lemon juice?
Um, I'd probably use the juice of whatever I had. If you smash the fruit as you're putting it in the jar, you're going to have pretty much enough juice out of whatever it is you put in the jar. I mean that you're adding juice is not something that you're going to have to go get cups and cups of. It's usually, maybe one lemon's worth of extra juice.
And then Pat would like to know, what kind of recipes call for preserved lemon?
Um, okay. As I said, if you just Google how do I use preserved lemons, you will get more results than you ever wanted. Um, North African cuisine, so Mediterranean type cuisine, has a lot of things, and they have lots of really interesting um, spice combinations in that cuisine. And so it's a place to do it. It goes great uh, with rice, either rice pilaf or just plain rice. If you took some of the preserved lemon peel and cut it up into the small pieces and then sprinkled it into your rice, um, you'd be amazed at how perky it makes the rice. It goes great with chicken. I have not run into a chicken that it didn't like. And I saw a recipe for packing it on top of fish, which kind of makes sense. And so I don't think there's an end to how you could use it. And like I said, I hadn't seen a cake recipe, but I'm going to try the cake recipe I saw last night.
Kelly would like some more, just a little bit of clarification. She said, you said move to the fridge for storage after fermenting. Is that before or after you do the rinsing stage?
Oh, I move the jars to the fridge and keep it just in the jar undisturbed, and I do the rinsing as using. So when I pull them out to use them, that's when they get rinsed. I tried it the other way, and they didn't hold as long as they do if they were still in the jar with all of the juice and everything around it.
And that was another question of how long will they last in the fridge?
The recipe, I believe, says 6 months, and when I was trying to see if I could eke them out for a whole year, um, I got them to go a little bit longer than the 6 months, but they really didn't make it longer than that, too much longer than that.
Okay, Samantha says, I put salt with kumquat without looking up. They've been there for a year and still have a fresh orange color. Do you think they're safe to eat?
Okay.
Have they been in the refrigerator?
That would be one of the things. I think as our duty as master food preservers is to say it's better to be safe than sorry and throw them away.
I think so too.
You know, when I was trying the experiment of seeing how long I could get them to last in my refrigerator, and I took all the pulp off and then put them back in the jar, killed me, but they all went in the garbage when it my experiment didn't work. They all went in the garbage, and
I
it's
thought that they got soft and squishy and not desirable
yeah.
after too
So
long in their.
this is a recipe that doesn't last. I mean, the lemon ginger marmalade, it's certainly good for a year, probably good for quite a bit longer than that. And I wouldn't be worried about the safety of it for longer than a year. But this, I don't think so. I don't think you'd want to use it.
We've got more questions coming in. People want to know. So if you're giving this as a gift and it's not in the refrigerator, how long is okay before getting it like into a fridge? Like how long can it be out if you're gonna gift it to somebody?
Okay, if I were going to visit somebody and I have, okay, this is the jar that I just started the other day with the uh, lime quats. Okay, if I'm giving them this jar that is in the fermenting or at the end of the fermenting stage, I don't have to worry about whether or not it's refrigerated right now because it hasn't been refrigerated yet. You know what I mean? These other jars that uh, this jar that is at the end of the fermenting stage, this is one of the ones I did first, and it's been a full 4 weeks on this. It hasn't gone into the refrigerator as of yet. So if I hand it to one of you and say, here's a gift, here's some preserved lemons. If you took it home and you waited several days before you put it in the refrigerator, it would be fine. I would say that once you move it to the refrigerator, you need to keep it in the refrigerator. And it's a thing that I wouldn't worry about it if it was going to be a few hours. If it was going to be a lot longer than that, then I might be worried about it. This is it's not the same as, because it's got so much salt and acid in it, that the salt and acid are the things that are really preserving this product.
Joanna wants to know, she says, you mentioned dried spices only, but what about garlic and onion, which were on the list? Is there an issue with them being fresh?
Are they, if they're not, did it say dried?
So you want dried onion and dried garlic, not.
I would not, I haven't tried that. I would only use dry. The difference is, I don't think it's a problem, but I don't know that I can say that. So since I don't know it, I can't say it. Um, the thing is, if you're putting a dry spice in there, you're not adding water to the jar, and so you're not adding anything to it that is going to make it unsafe.
Okay. They're still coming in. So if we've got some time to keep answering, Kate wants to know, when removing pulp and slicing to eat, are you trying to remove the pith as well, or is that good to eat also?
You can eat it, but pith is usually bitter, and so you're trying not to have a lot of that. So you really want to get to where you have as much of the color part as you can. I don't think it's possible to do it without any, but that's what you want.
Okay.
I see one here for, can I make it in April and gift it for Christmas? Um, you would be much better off to find an early crop in November and make it in November to give for Christmas, because citrus, I know down in citrus country down around Exeter and Visalia, they have a saying that you want your crop in by before Thanksgiving. If you don't get your crop in by Thanksgiving, you're not going to make any money that year. And so that means that citrus will be available at the begin. Fresh citrus would be available at the beginning of November, and you would still have more than a month to make your jars.
Okay, we've got a clarification question from Judy. Just to be clear, you take out the pulp and rinse as you use the lemons.
Yes.
Okay. Can you use store-bought lemons?
You can, and the person who joined us from Canada probably has no other choice. But it just costs more money if you're using store-bought lemons.
Okay. Lisa wants to know, is there a way to preserve just the color part of the rind and not the pith? Can you peel it before?
Actually, that's what I did with the giant one. This was an experiment here. And so when I took one of the giant lemons, because I knew it has an inch underneath the skin, and there's at least an inch of white pith before you get to the lemon part. And so it would take, if I were trying to put one of those giant lemons in quart jars, it would take at least 3 jars. And as it was, I put in, I cut all the yellow part off of one of those giant ones that was bigger than the one I had the picture of. And then I cut the yellow part off, left very little of the white underneath the yellow. And then I took the lemon that was in the middle, and it went in the jar too. So, depending on what kind of citrus it is, the answer is yes, you can. This just doesn't make sense. If the person who said they made kumquat ones, I own a kumquat tree, and if you had to peel kumquats, good Lord love you.
We have another one. If doing citrus like another citrus like oranges, do you preserve them in their own juice, or are you still looking to use lemon juice?
I would use their own juice, but I don't think it would make a difference really, because it's the salt that's doing the work here more than anything else. Think about those guys who sailed on sailing ships in the early 1800s. Everything was packed in salt. That was how they preserved their food. And they boiled it in seawater, which tells you how much salt they had everything preserved in. So
I think that is it. I just posted some links on there. We do have a Facebook page. You can call us if you have preserving questions, and that we will be uploading the handouts and video once we get it back from the Zoom world and get it edited to add our branding things. We'll get all this posted and let everybody know once it's all posted.
Okay. Great. Oh, and next month on the 3rd Saturday, we're going to have a presentation on dehydrating, and the master food preserver who's going to be doing that one we've crowned her to be the dehydrating queen of our group, and she has dehydrating information about, she likes to camp, and so she's going to be giving tips on how to make what you're packing. She and her husband go camping in the back of a pickup truck in a camper, and so there's not a lot of room. So dehydrating makes things take up a lot less room, and so she's going to have information on that. And in April, our presentation is going to be on pressure canning and freezing. So if those are things that you're interested in, keep an eye out and register for our classes when they become available.
Great. And we had lots of thank yous coming in. Samantha says, thank you so much. And thank you for probably saving her life, because she won't be eating those year-old kumquats that were in the refrigerator. They've not been put in the fridge yet. So they've been out fermenting for a year.
I don't think they would be anything you wanted to use. And my understanding too is from research that one of our members did for the blog, is that as far as they could tell, the original coming up with the preserved lemons was on something that was similar to the Meyer lemons with a thinner skin. So Myers ought to be really good for it.